coming out and allowing me to be part of such a wonderful event. So thank you for having me. The first thing we would like to do is we would like to ask our panel members, and I will kick it off to one of them, but we'd like to ask our panel members if you could, to be respectful of the time that we've asked for all of you to serve on this panel, we want to give an elevator speech version of introduction and then share anything you'd like to share about the organizations that you represent and or lead. So I think I will kick it off to Erin. If you could introduce yourself and then share about your organization.
Sure,
and then
right
we
next
will move it to someone else.
Right next to you, so I figured that was coming. Good evening, everyone. My name is Erin Upchurch. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the executive director for Kaleidoscope Youth Center. We are Ohio's largest and longest standing organization to solely provide service and support to LGBTQI+ youth and young adults. Some of our services include our drop-in center, which we're most known for. We have a housing program, a wellness program that provides counseling, case management, basic needs. We have an education training department where we provide trainings across the state. And we have a civic engagement advocacy program that we are consistently and continuously building just as we speak, and been able to work with many of our partners here. So thank you very much for bringing us all together and hosting this panel. And I will pass it to my friend Siobhan.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Siobhan Boyd Nelson. My pronouns are she, her, and I serve as the Deputy Director at Equality Ohio. We are a statewide education and advocacy organization. We are engaging hearts and minds in order to change laws and policies to bring about greater legal and lived equality for all LGBTQ+ Ohioans. We are seeking to create an Ohio where everyone is affirmed.
Is that your snacks water? Are you a meeting?
Is affirmed, thriving, and flourishing. Equality Ohio, we're doing a lot of work, first and foremost at the State House. At the State House, we're playing both offense and defense these days. On the offensive side, we continue to advocate for the Ohio Fairness Act. That is the statewide law that would make it illegal to discriminate against LGBTQ Ohioans on the basis of their sexual orientation or gender identity in the areas of employment, housing, and public accommodations. Right now, we don't have a statewide law. We're one of several states that doesn't have that, but thankfully we do have local non-discrimination laws, which are providing those protections for the folks who live and work in those communities. We are also providing service to our communities by supporting those local municipalities. We also have a legal clinic, a statewide legal clinic that provides 100% free direct legal service, civil legal direct representation for LGBTQ Ohioans who are at or below 300% of the federal poverty level. And you can always reach our legal clinic at 1-855-LGBT-LGBT-LAW. We're always here as a resource. We want to resource everyone, whether it's about policy across the state, locally, at the school level. And I'll just mention that we are fighting a number of bills right now. Two that I'll mention by number are HB 454. That is the law that would ban gender affirming care for our trans and non-binary young people here in Ohio, as well as HB 327, which is the Anti-Honesty in Education bill that would prohibit discussing the history of race in this country, as well as discussing the truth of sexual orientation and gender identity in our schools. So both of those are top of mind for Equality Ohio, and we welcome everyone's engagement on those bills, as well as a number of other policy issues. And I will pass it over to Letha.
Thank you, Siobhan. Good evening, everyone. My name is Letha Pugh. I am co-founder of Bake Me Happy along with my wife, Wendy Miller Pugh. We are a wholesale and retail gluten-free bakery and coffee shop with the location on the south side of Columbus in Marion Village and the second location in Dublin. I'm also co-founder of Black Out and Proud, one of the newer organizations here in the community, founded officially in 2018, where we educate, advocate, and inspire the Black LGBTQ community. I'm honored to be here tonight and to speak on behalf of Black Out and Proud. I am a longtime LGBTQ member of this community, and we've seen lots of organizations come and go, and they were all built with the intention of having space for Black LGBTQ people in this community. And that's what we want to build with Black Out and Proud. I will pass this to Denzel.
Good evening, everyone. Denzel Porteous, he, they pronouns. I currently serve as Executive Director of Stonewall Columbus. I've been in the role for about a year and a half, full-time for a year and a half as interim. Stonewall Columbus has been around for 40 years, working to uplift the LGBTQ community across Central Ohio to ensure that we are all thriving. We are an organization in evolution. I think what we have seen for our organization is that we continually sort of evolve to meet the needs or wants or demands of the community at the time that we are currently serving. And so I'm excited to be a part of the next evolution of the organization, where we're working to make space for all the diversity of our identities across a wonderful spectrum, working to empower people in several areas, in particular in economic development, in family creation, to support identity enrichment, and personal wellness. So we have long had support groups that we have served the community. We have put on Pride for a number of years, but we really want to be able to represent the 14th largest city in the country and the diversity of our LGBT community that we know that we have here. So as we sort of continue to evolve and grow our organization, hopefully for more than another 40 years, we'll be sitting here to work in partnership and in particular uplift the community in those 4 areas. So thank you all for having me here this evening. I'm looking forward to just engaging and having a conversation.
Great, thank you. And I think our last speaker is Chris.
Hi, everybody. Chris Goins. I'm the co-founder of Black Trans Men of Ohio. We kind of started 2 Black trans guys that got together and was like, we can't be the only Black trans guys in Ohio. Since then, we started our organization to kind of help mentor and help find the resources for some of our brothers as we discovered they didn't know what was out there for them, and to create space for them to be able to talk about their feelings, and kind of started a support group for them because we weren't able to find that in other spaces. So we created that space for them. We are a fairly new group. We're in our sophomore year, started in 2020. And I'm just honored to be here with everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. And I forgot to introduce myself before I pressed record. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself again. I'm Kathy Adams. My pronouns are she, her, and I am with Rainbow UA. So we organized this panel this evening as part of our city's celebration of Black History Month to make sure that we address the intersectionality of Black History Month and LGBTQ identities. And my co-host, Matt, I know is working on those issues with our schools as well. I'm teeing it off to Matt to start our question.
Sorry about that, I was muted. Thank you all for the wonderful introductions that you provided and for being so timely, because it gives more time for the conversation that we're hoping to generate. But we did want to ask another question. We would love for the panel members to share, what does the intersectionality of Black History Month and LGBTQ identities mean to you? And that is for anyone from the panel. Does anyone want to tackle that?
Are you raising your hand, Letha?
Yes,
Go ahead.
and taking myself off of mute, sorry. I think for a long time, I really struggled with the intersectionality of the two. I really believe that, it was, I was in a situation in my life where it was one or the other. And so, to get to a place where I'm able to kind of integrate and be my whole self has just made a world of a difference. And I don't know if it's, any one particular person or group to blame. I just think that, as a society, growing up in, frankly, in the Black community, I didn't feel part of the Black community. And then, my exposure to the LGBTQ community was pretty white, and I didn't feel fully part of that community. And so it has been a struggle. And I think over the years, as I within myself have come to, have a more positive, I think just get to the place where I really didn't care. I was just more of, I need to live, I need to be comfortable in my skin, I'm Black, I'm gay. But, I grew up with a lot of messages that it wasn't okay to be gay. And while I was hearing those messages, I felt like in the LGBTQ community, I just was invisible. And so, it was a hard place for me.
Thank you for sharing.
I'll share briefly. Yesterday, KYC received an award from the Complaint Treasurer's Office at their Black History Month celebration. And it was for the work that we're doing with young people, and especially with Black youth. And I thought about it and I thought, this is really significant to have something centered in the Black community, acknowledging a queer organization, queer services. And what I shared in my remarks is, I'm a queer Black woman, and I was a queer Black girl growing up, even if I didn't have language to articulate that or have images to reflect that back to me. And so when I think about representation and visibility, I also think about wholeness and belonging. I was also the weird Black girl, still am, but when you live life at especially visible intersections, you often do experience a level of invisibility that is painful. And so being able to not, just bring my whole self because I can, or because it's what I do, or because my position, but because it's actually invited and not just welcomed, but also affirmed, and knowing that we belong here really leads to me feeling whole and makes me want to celebrate.
Thank you.
This is Dunzel. I think the notion of intersection, I think, is probably what strikes me the most about it. Right? I'm from the Caribbean. I was not born in America. So when we think about Black History Month, that adds an interesting layer for me. Because often when we celebrate Black history in America, we only speak of American contributions, and we don't think about the diaspora and how we are all part of that history that we should be celebrating. And so that's something I often think about, because even within the Black community, as we talk about being gay or queer within that space, that intersection is often not had. So Erin, I'm so happy to hear, and actually I saw the post, to know that an organization within the Black community was there to make space and uplift a queer identity community organization is not something that you traditionally see. Here in Columbus, I've been seeing a number of panels representing Black History Month, and many of those panels did not include queer identities on those panels when they were speaking of Black History Month representation in the city. So again, that sort of intersectional moment is unique within that space. And then being a queer Black man within the gay queer community overall, you aren't often seeing a Stonewall the organization, first time in its history that it's being led by a queer Black man. That seems to me preposterous after 40 years, but that's something that we see. So the intersectional moment when we look at Black History Month and being LGBTQ for me represents so much in terms of struggle and identity and spaces of not being seen. And so ultimately representation in this moment is part of that intersectional moment to step up and say, hey, I'm here We have been here for a long time. We have 4 other phenomenal people whose identities have been in this community for a long time. And, you know, I'm thankful for this moment of representation.
Mm.
And we're not just stepping up and saying we're here for ourselves, though I will absolutely celebrate that internal reconciliation that is allowed to happen. I believe now for many of us, I know that I have had that internal reconciliation of 2 identities that have been often pulled in 2 different directions, or been told, or been positioned against one another, and 2 communities that have been positioned against one another. And so I think that the ability to reconcile those 2 identities within ourselves, to say, yes, I am both queer and Black, and that is a celebration in and of itself, is also a vision of possibility for young people. Because I can speak for myself, I didn't know that I was possible. I did not know that the life that I am living today was possible. And it took going out and moving to a different city for college, and really the internet to be able to look and to find examples of possibility that I could model my life upon. And then taking that and knowing that other people need to see that vision of possibility, and to know that reconciliation at that intersection really is possible.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, for me, being Black and being LGBT is it goes back, right? Because I can remember as a child coming up and being Black and not being accepted by the world and having those issues, you know, and discrimination there. And then discovering, you know, I was a part of the LGBTQ community, and being Black and going to church. We all know LGBT anything, anybody got a little sugar in their tank, or, you know, wants to be a boy or wants to be a girl, was never accepted in the house, right? So you kind of got to hide who you are as that, but you can never hide as being Black, right? So my organization, and then myself too, I'm kind of like on a mission to show that visibility, that you can be Black and you can be a trans person, you can be gay, you can be a Black gay trans person, right? You can be any of these things, and it all goes together, and you can be successful in life. Because my organization started because there was no visibility of somebody that looked like me. I know about all the other organizations. I used to attend Kaleidoscope when I was a child, when I was in high school. And being there, I did not have anybody that really looked like me or other trans experience when I attended. So even just seeing this now and loving it and wanting to be a part of it is I feel like it's very important, very now, especially now in today's world and the way our world is going, is very important for our youth to be able, even I even say our youth, I would say even anybody that doesn't even know about themselves, that have questions, thoughts, or anything, to be able to see Black people out here thriving as their full, authentic selves will give light to those to be able to move forward with themselves and live their truth.
So I think we have another question. I'd like for anyone on the panel to touch on this. Are there any things about the way we celebrate Black History Month in this country that you would change or enhance? I think Denzel started to hit on this, but I'd love to hear what other panelists, and if Denzel, if you have anything else to add, kind of share with that, because I think that's a very important part of what we all have seen and witnessed or experienced, depending on who we are, in the history of this country. But I think that's also, this panel is an important opportunity for us to shift narratives, to shift thinking, and that kind of thing. So would love to hear your perspective on that.
And I don't think that there's too much more for me to add in terms of my perspective. I think the space where we could continue to uplift and sort of diversify the diversity in which we are sort of highlighting, of course, is queer identities. I think social media is probably the best space because we consume media that we want to consume. We see representation of ourselves in these spaces. So yes, I see a lot of Black queer history being uplifted in this moment right now because that's what I'm being fed. But the reality is when I step outside of that bubble, we're not uplifted, we're not represented, and we're not part of the dialogue or conversation. I think even we know so truly with Bayard Rustin, for example, right? Like who was there doing so much great work, and really people didn't uplift the work that Bayard was doing for many years, right? There was an entire conversation within King's group to even whether or not Bayard should be sort of publicly gay in these spaces. So I think to see more representation of our queer identities being uplifted as part of Black history is something that I'd love to see a lot more of because we've been here and we've been doing lots of great things.
Thank you.
I would like to actually see us get to a point in our country where our celebration of Black History Month moves from being the only time that we talk about Black history to the moment when we do really deep dives into Black history. And that would be a really big shift in the way that we talk about Black people in our country and the way that we integrate Black stories into the story of our country, into the story of the world history and the entire diaspora, really, and integrating the diaspora into larger world history, which we don't do here in our school systems. And so if we did that, if we were talking about these names that we always dive into during Black History Month, those should be names that we're talking about all year long, so that during Black History Month, we can really get granular and get into the weeds and really talk about what underlies the history of Black people, because there's so much rich information there. There's so much to be learned about the struggle of Black Americans on this soil over the last 400 years. I mean, there's 400 years of richness there that we're ignoring as a country. And we really need to start digging in and utilizing that knowledge and that history that we have.
Can I add to that a little bit? Like, just in general, it needs to be taught in schools, period. Right? I feel like Black History Month is great. Well, yeah, we have 28 days of the year that we celebrate the achievements of Black people. And then what? It kind of just stops, ends there. But we always hear the narrative, but we only hear about coming up, only hear about the big people, like Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. We hear about those. We don't hear about the actual inventors, right? We need not just incorporate it there, but what about the inventors in our science classes, right? Now, why not put it in science textbooks to learn what this inventor did here? In history, about how we've helped develop things and find places, right? Just overall needs to be brought into taught at a young age so that Black people can see, younger kids can see, like in general, what we have done and what we have achieved. Because once we know what we have achieved, we can pretty much move past whatever narratives people have in their mind of what a Black person is. Because being Black in general is a wonderful thing. We are some of the smartest people in the world, but we are limited because we do not know what our ancestors have done. And if we can teach us what we have done, we can pretty much help the world and just, I don't want to say take over, but we could be better at collectively once we learn our history.
That's funny, Chris. I used to say, oh, good Lord. I talked about taking over things a lot, and I think it was kind of scaring people. But, it's interesting because it'd be interesting to be in the future and to look back to see how people see us here in this community and what role we've played. Because to be honest with you, to be a Black LGBTQ in Columbus We've put in a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of effort, just to be, in the space, where we are now. And, I think about, the younger people and how much work, they are doing. They are pushing us to, I think, be even better. I appreciate the nudges, because I think that it's easy as a human to just get kind of stuck in your thinking and where you are with things. But, I would agree with Siobhan. I struggle with this. I struggle with a Black History Month or Women's History Month. I just think that that is a way to further perpetuate like differences and others. And, what do you do on February 28th? You stop thinking and talking about Black people, and then you just pick up the next day and start thinking and doing about something else. That's not how it works, and I think I don't know if it was structured to be that way. I know it's a celebration, don't get me wrong, but I think that the way that this country has functioned is really done the celebration like a disservice.
No, I'll add, because I completely agree with everything that's been said, and kind of, Kat, to answer your question is, sometimes when I am sitting at tables with service providers and whatnot, I'll say like, queer folks are everywhere. Like, we are doctors, we're lawyers, we're librarians, we work at McDonald's, we are literally everywhere. We're not in some specific island, or we leave to come to the other world each day. And Black folks are everywhere too. And so when we think about, I think the celebration should truly be the celebration of the resilience and the thriving and community and the beauty and all of our art. Like, I love us as a community, our culture. And that shouldn't be the first time we're learning about certain people or occupations. And so I teach at the college level. And so if we're talking about social workers or a certain, author, like, bring Black authors in, bring queer authors in. If you're an English teacher and you're teaching about a certain type of poetry, who are all the poets that you're presenting? That's what happens year round. That's what happens, should be integrated, because we are quote unquote integrated. We are everywhere. And we look at all of our lessons that we're doing within schools or even in communities. We should be showing up there as well, not just a specific month, the shortest month of a specific year.
Can I add anecdotally, as I am someone who loves podcasts and loves specifically history podcasts, and podcasts that are about very nuanced or very strange pieces of history. And something that I've picked up over the past 5 years is that truly, I don't care what subject you're talking about, what innovation you're talking about, whether it's medical or in the social services world or where it is, there's a hidden Black person behind that innovation. There's probably like a hidden Black person that no one is talking about, that did some work, whose studies weren't accepted because they weren't accepted to that college at that time, or they didn't publish works by Black authors at that time, or they weren't giving patents to Black people at the time. And so their contributions to our society overall have been overlooked and have been hidden by the folks who were able to do the thing that gets the limelight, to do the thing that gets the headlines. And so when it comes to Black history, it's there to be found. It is so rich. Again, there are 400 years of Black people contributing to the culture and society and advancement of this country. All you have to do is look. And once you start looking, it's pretty easy to find.
And Siobhan, I think what you said is really poignant. We can't hide, right? I think that's a thing. So we've always been there in plain sight. And so to sort of be diminished when you were in plain sight, it's horrible. And then to also be squashed into a month, it's dehumanizing, quite frankly, right? So you know that we have been there, and you have chosen not to see us for all this time. Whereas queer identities, we had to silence ourselves because we weren't supposed to be in these spaces. No one, we had to, right? But you Black people, we can't hide. And so I think you're right, Siobhan. We were here in the background all the time, and we've chosen to not be part of the history.
So I'd like to jump in there and just say that one of the first things I said when I arrived here last year, I physically moved to the Central Ohio area the first week of February last year. And people immediately started asking me, what are we going to do for Black History Month, when I didn't even know where the restroom was. And I said, well, you know, what do you mean? Because quite frankly, I don't really limit Black history to the shortest month of the year. I think what Black History Month should be is a time to highlight what we've done the other 11 months. And that's the way I look at Black history. And so now, have we arrived there? No, we are a work in progress. We are going to continue to do that work, but we're going to highlight the historical accomplishments, the activities, the identities of Black people 365 days a year. We've got to be more deliberate about it. We've got to be tying it into our curriculum deeper and things like that. But that's the way I look at it is, if you're celebrating a certain month, it should be to highlight what you've done regarding those people throughout the year. This is just literally the time we give a little bit more light to it, but we should be doing that all the time. The other thing is, when we do things like Black History Month, last night I had the pleasure of being part of an open house at the Upper Arlington High School. And I could talk about whatever I wanted. I did the kickoff comments, and I decided to talk about a Black woman, because my thought was, we're going to do this Black history thing, and Women's History Month is coming right around the corner. We might as well just do the remix. So I did a little bit of both and blended it together and talked about Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune and how she took a school in Florida, started that school with $1.50, 5 little girls and a dream of educating Black people and fighting for civil rights. And so we had that conversation that kicked off the event. But I think sometimes we have to think like that. And so what I've learned tonight, though, is that we don't do enough to talk outside of the binary as well, especially in this community. So I love the fact that I've been here, that I've learned a lot about what your experiences are like, and that I'll continue to grow from that opportunity. And we'll be able to have a platform, because of the role I have at the schools, to be able to shine light on some of the things that I've learned from all of you. So I appreciate that. I think Kathy has possibly another question she wants to add.
One more thing about that. You know, when I started seeing history of queer Black folks and knowing that, like, we've always been around, like we truly have, even though we're not in history books, there was something, I don't know what the word would be, but expansive, like, oh, of course I've been here. Of course I'm a part of something deeper and bigger. And then I grew up in the church, that's a whole conversation. But when you get erased from conversation, it does something to your sense of self, and to know, like, oh, I am possible, like Siobhan said earlier about young people. And I remember I went to the Schomburg Center a couple of years ago in Harlem, and it was during Pride season in 2019, I believe. And there was all Black queer folks. And there were so many people I had never heard of. I knew we've been around since the beginning of time, but to see that, I was like, wow. And how that relates is, I grew up in Hilliard, and there was something about Black History Month that made me feel embarrassed about being Black, because we weren't affirmed or lifted up or talked about any other time of year. And so when it was Black History Month, I felt overly seen. Not that anybody said anything different. I still got the, like, I don't even think of you as Black kind of thing. But it was like oh God, now we're talking about Black people. What does that mean for me? And it was always the same, Martin, Malcolm, and Rosa. And, you know, the stories were different, but it didn't feel good. And so, you know, we look at places, especially schools, education places are predominantly white, or whatever diversity factors, you know, being queer, like that. I just want to give that real world anecdote of, like, it can't just be a one-time celebration. It's got to be integrated to reflect the students, the personnel, the actual world that we live in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I want to share this experience. I grew up in Nebraska, and I went to the University of Nebraska, and I was in the nursing college, and it was 5 cohorts with 50 students each cohort. I was the only Black student in the whole College of Nursing. And I remember someone, the dean had come to me and asked me to do a collage for Black History Month to put in the common area. And, initially I was resistant, and then I thought, I'm going to do it for me. I'm going to make it for me. And so it was hard. It was, 5 white men drugged the school into the river and blah, blah, blah. And when I would read that it would almost like empower me to get through another day, to get through another, week, to, in dealing with these folks. And it disappeared and no one could find it. And it just so happens that the dean of the college was a lesbian, this white woman. And, I went to her and I'd seen her at some parties in town. And so, we kind of knew that about each other. And we went and we toured through all these professors. She was looking in their closets. I mean, it was uncomfortable, but I was kind of like, I kind of like this. She's like going in on them. And we found it. And one of the professors said, well, some students had complained that it made them uncomfortable and blah, blah, blah. And I remember thinking it wasn't for them, it was for me. And, what about the truth makes it uncomfortable? And I think that's what, I've just learned about a lot of white people is, they would rather ban it than have to deal with the reality. Whereas for me, historically, I know how much Black people have gone through and I'm empowered by it. I want to be the best me because of that.
Thank you. Folks, if you're not speaking, will you please mute? Thank you. Kathy, do you have another question you want to pose?
Yes, thank you so much. I'm learning a lot, and I wanted to ask about your younger selves. So you are all strong, powerful leaders, thus the Power Panel title for our panel. And I imagine you have gone on a journey since you were younger. And so I'm going to ask it as kind of a compound question of what would you have told your younger self, reflecting back now, and then connected to that, what are some things that you would like youth today to know? I see we have some representatives from our schools and other folks from the city on this panel meeting.
I'll go ahead and start so I can get, go ahead, Chris. No, you go ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
Honestly, just to, what would I say to a younger version of me, my younger self? I wouldn't say anything, to be honest, because I don't think I would be here sitting at this panel if I didn't have my experience. Right? If I didn't have my lived experience to be able to experience the 3 strikes that I used to say that I had before discovering the word trans, right? Prior to that, when I identified as female, I used to say, when I walk in the door with 3 strikes before they even know what my name is, right? I'm Black when I first walk in the door. I'm a female when I walk in the door. And then they realize I'm a masculine presenting female. So that puts me in the LGBTQ lesbian box, right? So without living those experiences and going through those things, not just in college, right? Because in college, I would go for positions like I'm a tech guy, right? I'm IT, I love computers. And my love language is coding, right? And so doing that and going into those spaces and not seeing anybody that look like me. Going into those spaces and applying for those same jobs as my white counterparts, and they get the position and I have more experience, but I have to do more work and still not to get the position. I needed that experience in order to sit here today. Going through the military and being in the Army as a veteran and getting discriminated against, and then coming out and being discriminated against, getting pulled over by the police because I look too young to be renting a 2022 luxury vehicle, right? Without those experiences, I don't think I could be sitting here on this panel doing what I'm doing. So that bringing that light to history, right? To my history, to our history, so that way it can be seen that we are here and that our history is important and it needs to be taught to people so that we can be powerful again, so that we can do our youth, our future generations can have it better than what we had.
Mm. Mm.
Thank you for sharing, Chris. Wow. When I think about it, the first thing I always think to myself is I'm not supposed to be here. As a younger person, I think everything around me told me that I was not supposed to be here. Literally not alive, not sitting in this house, not having a child, not having a loving partner. My experiences as a young Black man growing up in New York City was that I was not supposed to be alive by the time, I turned 18. 20 was lucky, and 21 was something of magic. I was not supposed to go to college. I was not supposed to have a first job like I do. I was not supposed to work in all these spaces, and I think that is it's a hard thing to deal with, I think, to accept, because I never had visions of what my future would be. Every day for me is a new experience. It's a new journey. And I just continue to try to show up and sort of live through it. I think I'm similar to Chris. I'm not sure what I would say to a younger version of myself, because all of the lessons that I've had to learn to get to this point have been what have made me who I am. And I think to a younger version of myself, maybe I would say you're still going to be here. You're going to make it. You'll be one of the lucky few. I'm raising a Black daughter today, and I know that the challenges that she will have will be uniquely different than the challenges that I had. But what I'm sure of is that she knows, and she will always know, that she should be here, that she should be in every and any space that she desires to be in. Because I know when I was growing up, that was not a message that I heard or received. So the work that I'm doing is simply living my life, but like Chris, to ensure that those who are coming behind me don't have to ever have the same struggles or concerns that I had to deal with, where people always feel like they are welcome in the spaces they exist in.
Does anyone else want to respond to that question?
I can
Real quick.
relate to what Denzel was saying. I think, when I look back on, me as a youngster, I was just wild. I didn't have, I had a 15, 16, 20-year-old mother who was trying to figure out who she was. And so I had an inkling that I was gay early on, probably literally like maybe kindergarten, first grade. And just, if I could look back and give myself some type of message, I would probably, tell myself that, love yourself, figure out how to love yourself, and figure out how to be okay with you. Because once, I was in that space, I felt like my whole life kind of opened up. I felt like I spent a lot of years just struggling to figure out who I was. And especially as a youngster, how to, love myself and coddle myself and say it's okay. And, there's a lot of messages that, when I was growing up, I lived in this apartment complex, and there were these two lesbians that lived, and it was all Black women, all single parents, and one of them rode a motorcycle. And I remember distinctly sitting on the porch, like everybody would sit on this one porch all the time. And somebody would whisper like, oh, there go that bull dagger. And I would just be like intrigued, like, yes, there she is. Oh my gosh, she's so cool. And like on the inside though, just like I'm celebrating this person who I connect with on the inside, and how alone I felt with that, and I for a younger me, I would I almost envy the younger people today, because man, they just so free. I love it, and having just turned 50, you do a look back over your life and kind of do this developmental review, and but I agree with you, Chris. I think all the things I went through, I needed to go to be the person I am today. And then I look at my daughter and I think if she went through a quarter of the things that I went through, I don't think she could handle it, so it's a mixed bag.
I'm going to break from the general sentiment and actually say I would actually, I went through a lot of spiritual based pain in my young adulthood, especially. And I would absolutely not go through that and save my younger self from that. So as a 16-year-old, I was a 16-year-old evangelical Christian and a member of World Harvest Church and attending a parochial school, a Christian school, and had been and would for 12 years. And so there was a lot of self-loathing that was involved with my teenage years, a lot of self-loathing and a lot of questioning my my self-worth and my value and whether or not I should even be here. And most of that came from a spiritual place. And thankfully, I was able to reconcile that and resolve that spiritual angst, but it wasn't for many more years. It wasn't until I was 24 years old. And you can inflict a lot of harm on yourself in that amount of time. So if I were able to go back to my 16-year-old self, I'd say, you are a beloved child of God. You are worthy of existing. You should be here. And you need to stay here, and you're okay. You're okay. God loves you. And I think that while it would not have absolved many of the things that I needed to go through, it would, and probably not even have cured me gotten me out of the closet completely. There was still a lot of family stuff to go through on top of that. But it would have, I think, allowed me to avoid the worst of the hurt, and the hurt that has proved to be the least helpful in my life.
Whenever we have these conversations, I'm reminded that Siobhan and I have some very similar paths in life. And I didn't truly come out probably till I was 30. And prior to that, I was deeply engaged in Pentecostal evangelical church life. And because I was sitting here thinking, what would I say? And I would be stay soft and you belong and all of that. Yes. And I fortunately grew up in a family of origin. There was a lot wrong, but the one thing my parents did instill with us was the power of our voices and not being afraid to stand alone and all of those things. And so that was kind of ingrained in me. But the concept of who I was and on a deeper level never got reflected back to me. And and believing in God and the majesty and the expansiveness of God, to know that I wasn't possible, and not only that, but I might be going to a place called hell, and the people in the pulpit can say all the things they want to say, the faggots and and the dyke and all these words, and that can be okay, and that I would even preach it too. Right. At one point, I would preach it too in our Bible studies. And so I would say, and I love, Siobhan, that you shared your story, because there was a scripture that kept coming up for me. And I was I'm not going to share a scripture. I'm not going to, but my eyes were tearing up. And then you shared, I was I'm going to share the scripture. So the part of it is, no eye has seen, no ear has heard what God has prepared. And you can add God, source, universe, whatever you want to add in there. I have an integrated spirituality, but let's get bigger, people. When we think about the way the seasons just roll through, right? The sun rises, the moon rises. The flowers bloom. Look at nature. What do you mean you can't believe in a transgender and non-binary identity? I'm sorry, but my God, who created all of those things, created me and my siblings and this entire community. And I would have told my younger self that. That's the truth.
Thank you so much for sharing those stories. We are running low on time, but I want to make sure that we give an opportunity for the attendees to hear from you all. What can we do to support and advocate for your organizations? I know Siobhan kind of teed it off already, talking about some proposed legislation.
I'll just jump from there and just say, get involved. There are a lot of things happening that are impacting marginalized people, marginalized communities. And we need people to stand up. We need allies. And in my world, ally is an active word. It's an action verb like love. You don't say you're an ally, you do ally work. And now is the season of ally work. And that means showing up for our Black communities, that when we are, our legislature is honestly trying to attack our ability to talk about this rich history that we're talking about right now on a regular basis in our schools. We need to ally for trans youth right now who are not being affirmed right now in the messages that they're getting. This is the time for action and work, and there's action and work for all of us. It can be as little as voting, but you got to at least do that. And if you want to be engaged more, there's plenty of work to go around. All you got to do is head to one of these websites. I'm sure that someone has an opportunity for you to get involved in. But the word for 2022 is please be involved. It is not a time to be sitting on your couch.
Mm. Mm. Any other final words from panelists?
You know, I'll add. Yes, absolutely get involved. And I always like to tell people to let's smile at young people, right? Like, let's love them. Let's not worry about if it's a phase or not. Like, okay, we love kids through a whole lot of phases, but like, love on them. I think that is something when I think about what somebody can do, the individual things that we can do is to hold their dignity at the center of what you're doing. And the thing I love about Kaleidoscope Youth Center is, you know, my sole purpose for going to work and our sole purpose to exist is to create safer spaces and experiences of belonging and access to community for our young people. That's actually it. And that can, you know, veer off in multiple ways. And if you go to our website, you can see ways to volunteer. You can see ways to contribute financially. You can see our wish list. You can see all these ways, invite us in to do trainings, whatever it is. But when we look at the idea, the concept of privilege, it is our job, our role, and our responsibility to use what we have to create expansion for other people. And so, you know, I saw a question too asking about for young people in the schools and queer Black youth, like, look at your environments. How expansive are they? Is there enough room for everyone to exist and know they belong? Can they be affirmed there? Are you amplifying the voices that aren't often heard? Are you, and this is, you know, I think I'll end here, is the work of advocacy and allyship for me is from a place of love, from a place of not on my watch. So you will never harm anybody on my watch. I don't care if they're present or not. And that's how we have to be when we look at our young people, is not on my watch. So you don't let people say things in your presence. We don't let this legislation get through. We don't let organizations fail. We, like, whatever it is, not on my watch, not on our watch as a community. And our young folks need to know that there are people there who feel that way about them, but we need to also show up for each other in those same ways.
Wow.
Can I add to with this, you know, I think everybody that is here, right, that's listening to the Zoom, wherever you are, you know, thank you for being here, and thank you, you know, for listening to us. Okay. But you're really not the person that we really need to talk to be honest. But we need you to take everything that you learn here tonight and share it with those who are not here, right? Because this is That's how safe spaces are created, right? Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, right? In those moments, because it's very triggering and very hurtful for anybody to, detonate me or give or wrong pronouns, right? I brush it over, but it feels good when I have somebody beside me and that corrects them for me, right? So that's very important. So that's something that you can take and do. It's very small. It takes really no effort to say it's he, it's she, it's they. It's very simple just to quickly step up for that one person. You could change that whole person's world, right? Just being that one ally, right? An ally doesn't mean like for us trans people, we kind of fit under the LGBTQ umbrella, but we really kind of don't, right? So we even have, get discrimination within the LGBT world as well. So just having our allies there speak up for us too makes another huge difference. So I kind of want to add that in and to kind of support us is just, just share what we have, right? Like us on Facebook, Instagram, all those places, share our content, show up, right? Be present. And sometimes it's the smallest voice that makes the largest difference. So have a good night. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
It's interesting when Wendy and I started Bake Me Happy, we were like, you know what, we're just going to move through the world. This is our family, this is our daughter, this is our business. What people do with that, we didn't really care. And what's come of it is we have more people who want to work there because it's, a welcoming environment. We have staff who, they feel comfortable saying, I don't feel comfortable working in Dublin. And we work around that. Or, I tell them, fill that whole damn glass up with gay stickers in Dublin. And if they don't like it, they don't come, And so it's really interesting how it's just kind of worked out. Like it's almost like it's had like the opposite effect of just being out and having a business that is owned by two women and, especially in the suburbs. But for us, it was so important that we did represent just who we were. And, not all businesses have felt like they can do that, because I know business owners who have kept it under wraps. But for the most part, people show up and they support and they look out, and it feels good. It feels good to be able to represent in all the intersectionalities of our community, because I'm also a firm believer that, for the most part, humans are inherently good. And we just, what can we do to continue to foster that kind of energy?
I would just add, I think what everyone is really saying is, moving from allyship to sort of active engagement, become an accomplice, step into the work, like literally step into the work. Don't just uplift it, step into it, do it, become an accomplice. I think everyone here tonight are allies, but become an accomplice, step into the work, lift it up, step into it, do what you can to move it forward like it's your own cause.
Kathy?
Yes, before we wrap up, I want to make sure one last time, open floor for any closing comments from our panelists.
Kathy, did you want to talk about the organization you represent one more time before we go?
Thank you. Yes, I am with Rainbow UA. We are an organization in Upper Arlington to support the LGBTQ community And part of our mission is to support our youth. We're really youth focused. We are planning the second ever Pride in Upper Arlington for June 5th. And we are celebrating the 1 year birthday of our organization, which is actually around this time. And we had a lot going on this month. So we're going to celebrate our birthday party next month. And I'm so grateful to all of our panelists. I know I learned a lot and really appreciate this. Thank you.
I do have one thing to say, and I just want to publicly love on my friends and co-panelists here and just thank you all for what you do every day, whatever it is you're doing at home, at work, in the community, and for being yourselves. And you're all trailblazers in your own right. And I just really appreciate you and feel really truly gifted to know each of you. So thank you for being here and helping us and creating this space where we all can contribute and share.
Thank you. That was very kind.
Thank you. It's great to be in community with all of you.
Thank you. It's good seeing you all too.
I
Hopefully
just
in
want to
person.
say, before we go, I just want to say thank you all for having me here on this panel. There are some wonderful people, not only on this panel, but in this room. I've been in Central Ohio for a year, and I've been totally inspired by some of the people that I've met. But I can tell you that there's not one single night that I think from my personal and professional experience has been more powerful than tonight. This has been wonderful. I've learned a lot. I've been working in DEI for over 20 years, but honestly, in a 60-minute span of time, I'm not sure I've learned as much as I've learned tonight, just about people's experiences, about intersectionality, just a way to approach the work, life in general. And I really appreciate all of you. I think there's a lot of takeaways here. I think there's a lot of power in coming together and being together. I think that's something that has to continue. There's been some wonderful organizations represented in the chat. I have been repeatedly saving the chat and sending it to myself so that I can capture that information, get out to some of your organizations, maybe have some of you into the schools and get some training done. We always try to focus our educational opportunities in 3 specific ways: raising awareness, developing understanding, and building skill. And I heard a lot of that expressed on this Zoom call, and look forward to learning from all of you. So maybe reaching out, trying to get more information, more opportunity with you, and want to just thank you all for allowing me to be part of this.
And I will echo that Rainbow UA has enjoyed working with all of your organizations and look forward to supporting you and the support that we receive from all of your organizations and trying to support our youth as well and continuing this dialogue and collaboration definitely beyond Black History Month. And we appreciate you being here to make sure that we address those issues of intersectionality as part of the City of Upper Arlington's Black History Month. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I should mention housekeeping. I did record this and we will be posting it on our Rainbow UA website and saving the chat too. Thank you.
Good night.
Bye, everyone.
Good night, everyone. Ciao.